Morning, Hamas. Haven't missed anything. Okay, we are recording. Right, so from the point of view of the recording, we'll just start again. We're going to cover this here, containers. So we're going to use this lab session document. You're going to need these Docker tar files. Bring it over to your whatever your Linux environment is. But before we do that, I just wanted to revisit this whole thing about the containers, right, and virtualization, because I think between me and maybe some other lectures, you've done a little bit on containers at the moment, but you've probably just used and abused some Ubuntu containers or whatever Docker gave you. Whereas what I wanted to show you today was how to build your own container. I don't. The people yesterday seemed to tell me that you have done that yet. Maybe some of you have, maybe some of you haven't. But anyway, what I was trying to explain last Wednesday was the beauty of containers is you can, and the example I gave you was Python, that if I had, because you've done Python, if I had Python 2 scripts that use Python 2 libraries, and I was on a machine that no longer had Python 2 support and all its system libraries are Python 3, then I could end up with issues that my Python wouldn't run. So what containers allows you to do is to take my Python scripts and all the stuff and libraries that that Python 2 environment needs and put it in a container, and then it'll sit on top of Docker, and Docker, which might be sitting on top of Linux or Windows, it will run happily as Python 2, nicely ensconced in its container. Meanwhile, I could have Python 3 applications and libraries in this other container here. And over here, I could have C++ and C or whatever I wanted over here in another container. And the real beauty is, whereas up until, and still happens in a lot of places, when software development or whoever release new code, they tend to release an executable version, say version 1.57 or whatever, right, to QA. And QA will test that. And if something goes wrong, they all start giving out to each other. And sometimes it could be as simple as the setup or the environment. The developer machine might be an 8 gig machine, the QA machine might be a 4 gig machine, and it might be something different. Containers removes that, because what you actually release is not just the executable, you release the container. And the beauty of that is the development guy could technically be running his container on Docker on a Linux box, and the QA guy technically could run the container on a Windows box, and it should run the exact same, which is very nice in this day and age of multiple cloud machines. And they change a lot. You might change your servers a lot, but your container will still run the same. It's a very nice solution. Anyway, so I just wanted to remind you that's what a container looks like, little green bit there, right? So we're going to build little C, very simple containers. We're going to build some Python containers, and then I'm going to get you to do an exercise whereby you just have 3 containers: a Ubuntu, a Fedora, and a Debian, and I want you to get them to talk to each other. And there's a lesson you have to learn about that as well. Okay, but we'll get to that as we go through it. So if you have a peep at this, what are we going to do? You're going to run some C programs in the container. You're going to run a Python 2, Python 3. And feel free, probably not during this lab, if you have other Python scripts or programs that you've done for other lectures in other labs or whatever, feel free to try and put them, make your own container to run those, just as a side exercise. It's a good exercise to do to figure out how to do that. Okay, and then we'll do a little bit with Ubuntu, Fedora, and Debian. All right. I think I told you this before, but there are 2 main core distributions in Linux, and they're actually Debian and Fedora. Ubuntu is based on Debian, and then the other one is Fedora, and Red Hat is based on Fedora, and I think CentOS is also based on Fedora. Okay, so we're going to play with those as well. So let's have a peep. So the first part here is I don't want you to go practice all these, right? These are just here for reference, as a reminder for some handy Docker commands that you might want to use. Some of you may recall that one from last year during information security, if I had you for information security. PS -A, you might also remember start and exec. Okay, but don't worry about those for the moment. What I want you to do is here, all right? So we're going to start off, and you're going to build your first container. So if you get your tar file and you tar xvf it, right? So if we go over here and bring it over, so bring that tar file, that one, over to your Linux environment. Okay, and if we go tar x3egg, so what we end up with is 4 directories, right? Docker ctest, Docker your ctest, Docker Python 2 test, Docker Python 3 test. So we're going to go in here first, right? So Docker, spell it right, it might help. And this is going to be, what the way we're going to run this is, I'm going to let you go off for say 10 minutes to try this, and then we'll do it together, okay? But really try it yourself first, because in the face-to-face labs, I don't do this on the board. I go around and have a look at how people are getting on, right? And if you get it done really quick, then move on to the next exercise. Don't wait for the 10 minutes for me unless you really want to, okay? So what you're going to do is you're going to untar blah blah, go into your Docker ctest directory. In there you have a Docker file and a hello world exe file. Let's have a peep in there for a second. Oh, I'll get it right eventually. Sorry, I was already in there. My apologies. Okay, so I have a Docker file and a hello world file. The hello world file is an executable of a C program that's literally just going to probably say hello world or something like that, right? Notice I don't give you the source. The whole point is you're getting the executable and you have to put that in a container. And how you put it in a container is this Docker file, right? So you don't have to do anything at the moment except build it and run it, right? So there's the instructions. You build it, and then you run it, and you should get a message, right? It should run. Okay, so I'm going to give you 5 minutes to do that because it should only take a few minutes to do that. And if you get it done before the 5 minutes, go on to the next one and see can you do that. Okay, when we get through this one, let's say, oh, give me 5 minutes to do that. Then we'll have a look at this. The whole point is you have to figure out. This one I give you the Docker file. This one I don't. So anyway, I'll give you 5 minutes. 11:38. I'll give you till 11:43 to get that first one built, okay? And then I'll build it. And if you get it built, keep going. Some of you will do this quite quickly, so feel free to just keep going through the instructions if you do. And let's say, if you finish it and you're happy, you can leg it. I don't mind. If you want to wait for me to catch up and everybody to catch up, that's fine as well. But this shouldn't take more than about an hour max. Any questions? Any questions? Okay, I'll give you 5 minutes. So 11:44, we will come back and have a peep at that. All right. See you at 11:44. Okay, let's just double check. Everybody can do this. Should be reasonably straightforward. Over the instructions. Docker build minus C test minus T C test, right? So let's try that. Put this over here. Okay, so Docker build minus C test, and don't forget the dot, right? And you'll have to do this, and it should build it, right? So you see what it's doing. The instruction in the Docker file, which you'll have a peep at in a minute, said build on top of a base Debian OS, right? So it basically did that, blah, 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 and we've got something, right? So let's go back to the instructions. And it says to run it, Docker run C test, right? Docker run C test. And there you go. So you should have got that, hopefully you got that, right? And if you didn't, maybe you should be able to get it now. And worst case, look at the video, right? However, let's have a little peep here. You'll notice that there is no Docker file created there. So where is it gone? Well, it's stored in Docker's little space that it keeps for these images on your whatever your Linux environment is. I think it's actually in /var/docker or something like that. Yeah, see there? It's in there, but you can't see it. You don't have permissions, right? If you're in your own machine, you might have permissions, but it's root controlled in Google's environment, right? But that's where it starts. Anyway, the main point is it creates them and it stores them somewhere. If you want to see what they are, if you go Docker images, you'll see here, you'll see ctest, which is the name of I've just created that container. There's its image ID, this wonderful thing that if you want to start, stop it, all that sort of jazz, you get this. Created about a minute ago, and it's based on a Debian one, so it downloaded that for us. That's what it was doing, and you can see that they're quite small. Okay, so what it did is it created a Debian container. It says, right, he's going to need that, so we'll give him that, and then it essentially made a copy of that Debian container and added in my executable. I created that container. Okay, really, really simple stuff, but that's your very first container. Any questions on that before we go on? Say, ask away if you have any questions. Well, that's the first part, right? So, second part. Now, what I want you to do is go into the next directory, right? The Docker your C test, right? So you come out of that directory and go into Docker your. Okay, so in there we have a different executable, okay? And what I want you to do is in there, I want you to build that into a container. And that's all I'm going to say. It does actually tell you what you need to do, right? Call the container, then you need to create the required Docker file, show the results. So I'll give you 47. I'll give you till 11:55 to try that. Okay, so you're now trying to build a container to contain that executable. All right, if you have a question, just shout at me and I'll hear you, okay? So I'll let you go for another, whatever, 48, 57, 7 minutes, okay? So we'll see you in 7 minutes. Okay, let's have a look at this one. So first problem is we don't have a Docker file yet. So all you do is you copy the Docker file from the other directory. I think it was called Docker ctest. Don't forget to put that in. Okay. Now I have a Docker file, right? So we go in there and we're going to have to edit this. So don't mind about the comments. I robbed this from a Python one, right? So just to again explain this, okay? So what it's doing is there are 3 commands in this Docker file: from, copy. Like we could. So we can get rid of that because it just confuses, right? Well, actually, it doesn't confuse it. Why don't we fix the. Let's actually make it so that it makes sense. The first parameter is the name. Okay, in our case, right? And in this case, it will. Okay, so we'll have a little peep at this file now in a second. So what's it actually doing? So a Docker file. You have to base on some operating system, right? You're going to run it. So we're going to run it based on Debian, okay? We could put in a specific version of Debian there we wanted to, or we could put in Ubuntu, or we could put in Fedora, or a specific version of any of those operating systems, right? At the moment, we're just saying, base it on the latest and greatest out there from Debian, right? Because we're happy enough that our simple little exe will run on that. This is, remember, this is the Docker file from the other one. So we had an executable called Hello World. And remember, we did I mentioned chroot last week. That's really the basis of how all these containers are formed. So what it's basically saying is copy Hello World, which is my executable, and I want you to put it at the root of the container. That's where I'm going to run the stuff from. And then once I've done that copy, how I actually run it is I give Docker a command, and it will run whatever's between the inverted commas, right? So in this case, I'm just running one simple executable. I could copy multiple executables across. I could run multiple executables. I could, I could have an executable that took parameters, it could anything, yeah. So in our case, we just want to keep it nice and simple. So what's wrong if I run this, right? So I've brought that Docker file across. And now if I try build this, your ctest, we'll call it, dot. Oh, it helps if I my little screen is getting a bit messed up there. So when I run it, it's going to fail. Yeah. Why did it fail? And you're going to say, why did that fail? Some of you probably got this error if you did it. Why did it fail? Any ideas? There's only a few of us, so you can come off mic if you want to give a suggestion. Any idea why that failed? What's the problem? Come on, I don't bite. Come on, if it was in the lab, you'd say, you'd give it a go. Why did it fail? Nobody will have a go. Okay, it failed because it's the Docker file from the other container, right? So the executable it's trying to refer to is, yeah, exactly, yeah. Thanks, James. It's the other executable, whereas our executable is your hello, right? So all we simply have to do, very simple, is go in and fix that. Okay, we have a different executable. Change those two. Now we try to build it again. That looked better. And then we try to run that one. And there we go. That ran as well. Okay, very, very straightforward. But now we've built our own one and we've created a Docker file. So all this is trying to reinforce to you is if you are going to build your own containers, don't forget you need a Docker file, right? And it can be very simple. And there's loads of reference stuff out there. But it's that simple to build one, okay? So with that in mind, I'll see Docker image. Let's have a peep and see what we have now. So now we have three. We have the original Debian, that's the vanilla Debian one, okay? And don't forget, we can do things like this, yeah. Docker exec. Oh, we probably need to start. Let's try start this. Docker 05. That should start the Debian one. No, this is container. Will be should we try and figure this one out? I know I can do Docker. Oh yeah, sorry. Go show you. Debian bash, and that should run. See how quick it already has the Debian one installed, so it jumps straight into the container. See it? That's like what we did from last year. So now I'm actually inside the container, right? So I don't have my normal stuff. I don't even have void, right? I don't have ping. I don't have loads of stuff here, but I'm actually running inside the Debian container. I can also, by the way, jump into my. Well, actually, let's try this. I haven't done this with anybody else. Let's see if we can run ctest. Now, this is interesting, right? We've now jumped into the ctest container we created. So somewhere in this container is my hello world executable, right? So let's have a look and see, can we find it? And there it is. See it there? So that container has got everything the Debian wants, but it has that extra hello world. If I jump out of it, and then I'll actually run your ctest. And if I have a look there, you should see that your hello. See it? So that's just hopping in and out of them. They're essentially mini operating systems with our executables added in. Hopefully everybody can see that. So Docker images. There are three images. And if we go Docker PS, we see nothing, because why do we see nothing when we go Docker PS? Anybody want to hazard a guess? Why don't we see anything? Docker PS should tell me all the Docker containers I have running. We don't see anything because we're not actually running any containers. They've all run and exited, right? So for instance, if I go Docker PS -a, now we're getting a little bit more information here, right? Now it's basically saying, well, actually, this is the history of all what you've run and exited over the last since you started this session. See it there? So there's our full listing of what happened. We ran ctest 18 minutes ago. We ran your ctest 3 minutes ago. Then we did a Debian, and then we jumped in and out of these two, right? We've exited out of them all. And remember, if we were to go back into one of them, so I'm back into the your ctest one, and if I just go open up another window here and I go Docker PS, now I should see one. You see the running one, okay? But if you want to see them all, the history of what you've done, you need to go Docker PS -a for all. Okay, right. So that's a very quick trip through those. Right, so let's have a peep here. Python. So again, this should be reasonably straightforward, right? What I want you to do now is just very, very simple. If you go back into Docker, where am I? Oh, that's because I reconnected. That's pretty. Where am I? Where am I? OS 2021 Docker. Yeah, here. Docker 2 test. Right. So in here we have. So if you do this one first, right? There's a very, very simple Python 2 file. So if we have a peep at that. Wow. Okay. Python 2. And if we have a look at its Docker file. So we see a little difference here. Whereas before, we were saying run it just to see in a straightforward Debian environment, right? Now we're basically saying I want you to base it on the Python 2 image, right? So have a look at, get that one running. So do that one first. And then for the Python 3, similar to C, you're going to have to create the Docker file for the Python 3 one, okay? So I'll give you, where are we, 12:05. I'll give you, again, give you, what, 8 minutes to play with that, right? The first one's a joke, and the second one you just have to be careful, make sure you get it right, okay? So 12, 12. We'll come back and we'll have a peek at those. All right, any questions? You still awake? Hopefully by the time you finish this, you'll at least know how to use a Docker file. And as I say, there's an interesting one with Fedora that you need to know as well. Okay, not seeing any questions. If you do have any, as I say, just shout. So 12:12, we'll come back and have a peep at those. Yeah. Sometimes when you start doing emails. Okay, let's have a peep here. Like that. I'm still running inside a container here. Yeah. Okay. Python 2. Okay, so yeah, we're sharing. So let's have a peep. Where are we? We were doing this one. To test, right? So we're in the right area. Now this is as simple as docker build -c. Call it whatever you want. What it's going to do now is it's going to download all it needs for this support Python 2, right? And this will be bigger than just the 124. We'll have a peep at it in a minute. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. All right. And then if we run it, docker run, I call mine py2. Okay. Very, very simple. Yeah. So let's have a look at our images. So now we have a Python 2 image, and as you can see, it's a lot bigger because it needed a lot more to be able to support Python. Okay, so just let me get you guys back up there in case you have any questions. So that was Python 2, very straightforward. And then if we go into this one, again, our problem is we didn't have a Docker file. So if we copy it across and then go in and have a peep at it. Right. So first thing we need to do is this is Python 3, right? So we need to change that to be 3. And then the rest of it is probably the same. Is that what we called our main.py was the thing. Okay, so that should do it. Oh, I've lost it. Where did it do that? R3. Nope. Something a bit fishy here. Bear with me for a minute. Okay. We might put our terminal is back in the maggot. Right. So we should be okay now. Just have a look at that. Let's figure out where that happens. No, it's still. Oh, look, see it's still there. Look. It's a bit annoying, isn't it? So I've noticed this, all right. Need to go back in here for a second. I'll figure out how to fix that. The only way I can fix it at the moment is to just open up a new session. Get rid of that. Change that. Okay, we're good to go this time. Well, I think we are. Okay, we're good to go this time. Docker build -t py3 dot. It's going to download. Some it already has. Needs to download more stuff. Obviously, depending on your internet connection and your speed of your computer, this might take slower or quicker for some people. But if we did it right, Docker run py3. Okay, and you get that message. So if we have a peep, we now have run all those, And we now have close. Okay, so hopefully everybody is at the same stage. And if not, watch back the video and make sure you can do these things, because I think these will stand to you when you go out on placement and you have disability, and people start talking about containers, and at least you can enter into the conversation and you can say, oh yeah, I've done that, blah blah blah. Okay, so last part. I'm not seeing any questions, so I'll keep going. Hopefully you're all still awake. So last part. Now, okay, what I want you to do here is we want to try do some messing with Ubuntu, Debian, and Fedora, right? So we'll do this. We don't need to build it like we did with C, but the containers will be pre-built by Docker, okay? So if we type that, as we've already done, you'll get a Ubuntu bash one, right? So if I go docker run -it Ubuntu bash, I now have the download what it needs, and I've jumped into a Ubuntu container, all right? So that's that one. We'll get rid of that one, right? And what else did I say? I said blah blah blah, and you can do that. Yeah, it's just you've seen that. So we've Ubuntu running as a container. In another window, download a base Fedora container and download a base Debian container. All right. So I'm going to do the three of them so you can see. So if we go and you should do this. Run -it. So instead of typing Ubuntu, if you type Debian, you get a Debian container, and open up another window. And if we go Fedora bash, we don't have the Fedora stuff, so it's going to download that. Yeah, so we've jumped in, and let's just open up the third one. And if we go docker ps, we see the three. All right, so we have, see over here, a Fedora, a Debian, and a Ubuntu. That's the Ubuntu, that's the Debian, that's the Fedora. So what I want you to do is so hopefully you get to here. I want you to where is it? So try ping from one container to the other. All right. So did it work? No, it won't work because if you try ping in any of these, you don't have it, right? So how do you know what the IP address is to ping? You don't. All right. So we can do that for a minute. So what you need is you need to figure out how to get ping to work, right? So you're going to have to use ifconfig or something to get your IP address, and you're going to have to figure out how to install the packages to be able to run ifconfig and to be able to run ping. So if you read that, right, so you can figure it out. So you got to install it on all three, right? I want you to get all three to ping each other, and the important one, the hardest one to get working, is Fedora, right? So you might need to do a little bit of searching on the web to figure out what packages to download and also how to download it with Ubuntu versus Fedora, right? So I'll give you 10 minutes to try this, right? So 12:30, I'll give you 8 minutes. 12:30, I'll come back and we'll have a look and do it together. But have a try yourself to try get the three of them set up and see can you get them to ping each other. All right. And there's a little lesson that you need to learn as part of this, the difference between Ubuntu and Fedora. Okay. So I'll give you 8 minutes to do that. I'll see you in 8 minutes. Okay. Let's have a peep. Right, so we're on the Ubuntu one first. So we go apt. First of all, you need to find out what package if config is in. Did you find out what that is? Anybody find that out? Did you find out what package ping is in? Anybody find those out? Anybody? Anybody out there? Who's left? Anybody find out the packages we need? Surely somebody did. Come on, somebody say something. Please. No? Nobody. Okay, well, if you look it up, you'll find it's apt. What we're going to install, NetTools will give us isconfig, right? And it helps if I type it right. Unfortunately, it says dependency list problem, right? So what you needed to remember to do was apt update. And then if we go and try and install the NetTools, hopefully we now have ifconfig. Whoa, what's this? Interesting. Not sure what's going on here. Really? Oh, is it one? Interesting. Oh. Okay, it's the new one on me. All right. Config. Oh, I've gotten my stupid screen crap again, am I? I can't see that. Wonderful. Oh, God. We're getting the same with the Debian one. Oh, let's reconnect here for a second. Okay, we'll try it one more time. Apologies for this. There we go. Sorry, my screen gets messed up. Okay, so we now have the Ubuntu one is 172.18.02. I think this is the Debian one. And we need to also do that apt update here. And then apt install NetTools. Okay, and ifconfig. Okay, so this is 18.03, the other one's 18.02, so we need ping, but we don't have ping. Did you find out which package ping is in? I suppose you didn't find out which one ifconfig is, you didn't find that either. So apt install, I think it's iputils ping. You need to be able to do things like this. Okay. God, I didn't know this. Okay, so if I try ping 172.18.0.3, it's the Debian machine. That's working, okay. And if I go to the Debian machine, and I'm gonna have to do the iputils ping as well. And if I ping So remember, this machine is driving me nuts. Apologies. Okay, this machine is 03, so the other one, the Ubuntu one, is 0.2. So 18.0.2. So we have those two ping each other. Right. So now the problem. If we go to the Fedora one, okay, our problem with the Fedora one is we don't have ifconfig, and if we do apt update, it doesn't have apt either. So did anybody figure out what you need other than apt on Fedora to try and install stuff? Did anybody figure that out? Please, anybody? Anybody figure it out? No comments. Okay, so I'll give you the answer, but you really should be able to figure this out. It's a thing called Yum, okay? And there's another one, if we go here, Yum alternatives on Fedora. You got DNF as well, okay? So let's go have a peep. So what I'm saying to you is, oh, Clear doesn't even work on Fedora, by the way. So if I go Yum, install NetTools, so absolutely type it correctly, NetTools. So essentially you replace apt with the word Yum. Don't blame me for the names, okay? And it installs what you need. As you can see, it tells you a lot more as well. Config. So now I have, this one is 172.18.04, but I think I still don't have ping. No. So we'll try the other one for ping. DNF install IP utils. Okay, so I think that's because we need to do a DNF update, right? So essentially, if you're working on a brand new installation, you need to do the update before you do the install, okay? And it just updates its database of what it has versus what it needs. Now, if we try and install that, it should hopefully work. No, it doesn't. So I'm not sure what. Do we have ping? No. So let's find out what ping is in Fedora package for ping. How to install ping? Let's have a look. Just IP utils. See it there? So the Google Monster has the answer for everything. We will use DNF. Now it should work. Ping 172.18.0.2 for the Ubuntu one. That's working. And .3 for the Debian one. And that's working. Okay. So that's essentially it. The message is of this lab is twofold. One is how to use a Docker file to build simple containers. That's one. And the other thing to watch out for is on Fedora, because when you go out on placement, if you come across a Linux server, it's not guaranteed to be Ubuntu. or Debian, it could be Fedora. And if it's Fedora, there are differences. Okay, so you need to be aware of those. This is one of them, and this is a pretty major one because you need to be able to install stuff. So remember, on Debian or Ubuntu, it's apt to update and install. On Fedora, it's yum. Okay, don't blame me, or DNF. All right. So, any questions? I think that was basically it. Yeah. Any questions? Are you still alive there? Somebody say something. Or have I been talking to myself for the last hour? That's possible too. Anybody? No questions. Thanks, James. Anyway, okay. So I'll do a little bit of editing on the video to remove the gaps, and then I'll put it up. Are yum and DNF always the same? Yeah, Philip. If you look it up? DNF is just basically a super duper yum, right? It's built on top of yum. I think underneath the hood it uses yum. It's just more friendly if you look up what it is. Okay, so you can use either. Good question now. Anybody else? As I say, hopefully you know a little bit more than you did an hour and a quarter ago. All right. Okay. If there's no other question, I'll leave it at that. Don't forget, please turn up tomorrow for the session tomorrow, and we've a little bit of one lecture to do, but also more importantly, if you have any questions on CA2, I'll go through them. No one has sent me any questions on it yet, so if I don't get any questions, it might either be a very short session, or what I'll probably do is just do a few little revision things just to make sure people understand what I might ask them. Okay. All right. I shall kill the recording and we'll leave it at that.